So thank you for joining us for this Spark News Media event into Women in Leadership. With me, I have Phumzile Mlambo Ngcuka, and I am so delighted to be able to speak to her today, one of the groundbreaking politicians of her era. And it really is an honor for me to speak to you. It feels like your job has never been more important, never been more pressured, and probably never been harder. Do you think that's an accurate representation?
Yeah, no, definitely. It's gotten complicated. We are already projecting that we were not going to reach our objectives, the objectives of the SDGs, and that we needed to accelerate the interventions. And with COVID, it just changed everything.
If ever there was a moment to make us realize how far we have to come, this is the moment, isn't it? Because we feel like those hard-earned gains were perhaps
brittle,
not built on as firm a foundation as we might have thought. It also brings into sharp relief, doesn't it, just how vitally important it is that, to come to the theme of what we're talking about today, how important it is to have women in roles of leadership.
Yeah.
In your opinion, has there been sufficient recognition of the gendered impact of COVID in governments throughout the globe?
Even when there is recognition, the actions that are taken are not equal to the challenge that we are facing. So, for instance, 144 countries responded to the Secretary General's call on dealing with violence, which we saw increasing during COVID. But the fact that the Girls government, 144, acknowledged that this was a problem. You do not have 144 countries who have changed their strategy drastically in response. I think the point I'm always making about this issue of violence against women is that it is a pandemic in its own right, and we now know what it takes to fight a pandemic.
Why do you think there is this lack of urgency among governments?
The lack of leadership of women at the most strategic places, so increasing women's leadership is something that would definitely change, and a critical mass of women who would be able to take decisions without having to refer to somebody. The fact that women are not, in many cases, the ones with the final say means that their decision making and their choices of interventions that is needed still need to be underwritten. And also, we don't have women everywhere where we need them, because gender inequality happens everywhere.
I mean, that's what we're talking about, isn't it? Like, if we really are going to see this, if we are going to face what is really happening, then it requires more than tinkering around the edges.
Oh, yeah.
It requires a fundamental overhaul of the entire system. In your view, is there any sense that there is a willingness to do that, or do you see any hope in any examples of countries where they are moving towards that direction?
I'm always using this example of 25 years ago, where we started, just so that you can have a sense of the journey traveled. We had maybe about 10 countries which had legislation that addresses gender equality. Now we have 144 countries, and 25 have also amended their constitution. So that is significant because it protects all the women in those countries, because when you change legislation, you are providing a dispensation for everybody. And the changes in the laws that has happened has covered more than 2 billion women. But guess what? There's still about 2 billion women who also lives in jurisdiction where some of their rights are not covered in law.
In your view, is that where in countries where there is a higher female participation in civic society and in politics, or where we have strong female leaders both in politics or in other fields, have those countries performed better and B, performed in a more gender inclusive way?
Yeah, a combination of women in leadership. Whether you're talking New Zealand or the Nordic countries where they have female heads of states. The state of Kerala in India, just that state with a health minister who was a woman who was leading from the front of the pandemic. Certainly, we have seen a more engendered response, but also not just an engendered response, a people-centered response, where there was a focus on both fighting from the health side, dealing with the issues of just the needs of people, and at the same time looking at the economic issues at a macro level, a combination of that, and not bringing politics into it, and being inclusive in terms of decision making and working with everybody, working across political parties, etc.
Absolutely, and with bearing that in mind, if we have we have these positive examples both in the political sphere and in civic society. How can we improve that engagement, and how do we pave the way for women to take a more active role in the decisions that affect their lives?
I think we should not stop. Our activism has been renewed, and we've been given a greater sense of urgency, and we must not associate this with the pandemic. This is our life, pandemic or no pandemic, because any slowing down or reduction of the pressure would just mean that we go all the way back to levels of inadequacy that even is worse than what was there before the pandemic. So staying focused and engaged, and then consolidating our demands, because there's one thing that has also come out is just the similarities that are there in many countries. And again, I come back to why we want generation equality to be a global campaign that involves everybody on a few of the issues that we think can be game changers if they're addressed. It is because we recognize that there is no one country that can handle this alone. Governments have to hear this from everybody everywhere. And you should use the multilateral system as a platform where we bring these issues, because that is where all of them come together.
So this is really the moment. It's do or die.
This is really the moment. I thought I was getting ready to retire. I recognize that this is
no way.
This is not the time. We do need, though, to bring in young people. Their radical impatience is refreshing, and their perspective and expectations from life, which I think is less forgiving than ours, is also a critical advantage that we need.
And this next year that we're going to have the Generation Equality Forum, are you confident that it will go ahead for a start? And can you assure us of that? And what can we look forward to?
It's definitely going to go ahead. I've got the paper, they've signed.
Great news.
And also, they are participating. All the different stakeholders are participating. We have got dates and all of that. But I mean, the important thing is not just the forum itself where we get together, is what we will be bringing to the forum. So the 6 themes that we're working in will determine the kinds of actions that we would have agreed to take. So what you can expect is, what are we going to do different on violence against women, which is one of the themes. Economic justice, definitely we will tackle the issue of care in economic justice, because it's crippling us. We will tackle the issue of macroeconomic policies that are responsive to women under economic justice. We are dealing, another theme is climate, women and climate justice. We will look at the different ways in which the way we deal with climate change impacts on women. The other issue is SRHR. Again, the accessibility of services that women need in order to make sure their reproductive rights and health needs are addressed adequately. So that's another theme. And innovation and technology is another theme, and women's leadership. So
I would love to ask you, because you are such a trailblazer, the first female deputy president in your country. What was the best piece of advice anyone gave you as a political leader?
You know, it's when you are on a platform, the platform that you have been given, make sure that when you enter into any meeting, have an objective to use every moment to push something, because that moment will never return. And you may not get what you want at that moment, but you may plant a seed so that you follow up at another time or at another platform. So I guess it is, and the message was, to be in leadership is about using every opportunity, not as a nice to meet, but as a nice to do. Push every button that you can push wherever you are.
That's incredible. Phumzile, I think that's us. We're out of time.
Thank you.
It has been an absolute honor to speak to you.
Yeah.
Thank you for being such a trailblazer. Thank you for showing the way for so many other women, and thank you for fighting the good fight every day.